Silas Crawford stared at the orange plastic stakes scattered across his land like some kind of surveyor's graveyard. 27 stakes. He had counted them twice, each one driven deep into soil that had belonged to his family for 3 generations. The morning sun cast long shadows between the wooden fence posts he had moved exactly 2 feet eastward just 6 days ago. 2 feet. Such a small distance. Such a massive mistake. The stakes formed a perfect grid pattern, methodical and precise, as if someone had planned this for months. But planned what? And why was there a bright yellow notice taped to his mailbox that he was afraid to read? The fence repair had been simple necessity. The concrete foundation of his old tool shed had cracked during the winter freeze, pushing against the property line and threatening to collapse the entire structure. Moving the fence 2 feet gave him the space he needed to pour a new foundation properly. The work took him 3 days. Clean, legal work on his own land. Or so he thought. Silas walked the fence line slowly, his weathered hands tracing the new posts he had installed. The Crawford Ranch stretched across 400 acres of prime Arizona desert land, bordered by the Sonora Hills development on the east. The development had been there for 5 years now, a collection of modern houses with red tile roofs and perfectly manicured lawns that looked alien against the natural landscape. The homeowners association that governed Sonora Hills had always been particular about appearances, but they had never interfered with his ranch operations before. The yellow notice fluttered in the desert breeze, demanding his attention. Silas retrieved it from the mailbox with steady hands that betrayed none of the unease growing in his chest. The letterhead read Sonora Hills HOA in elegant script, signed by Miranda Kellerman, Association President. The words that followed hit him like a physical blow. Due to unauthorized boundary modifications and zoning violations, the Sonora Hills Homeowners Association hereby exercises its legal right to reclaim disputed territory. Construction of 40 single-family residences will commence on Monday, November 18th. All structures currently occupying the designated area must be removed within 30 days. Silas read the notice 3 times before the words fully registered. 40 homes. On his land. The stakes suddenly made terrible sense. They were marking house lots. Someone was planning to build an entire neighborhood on property that had been in his family since 1952. He pulled out his phone and dialed the number printed at the bottom of the notice. A smooth, professional voice answered on the second ring. Miranda Kellerman speaking. This is Silas Crawford. I just got your notice about building houses on my property. There must be some mistake. A pause. Then a laugh that sounded like wind chimes made of ice. Oh, Mr. Crawford. There's no mistake at all. You moved your fence. You violated the boundary agreement. And now you'll face the consequences. The line went dead, leaving Silas standing alone among the orange stakes that would soon become the foundation of someone else's dream. But something in Miranda's voice suggested this was only the beginning of his nightmare. That evening, Silas spread every property document he owned across his kitchen table. Deeds dating back to 1952, survey maps, tax records, insurance papers. Somewhere in this pile of yellowed papers lay the truth about his land rights. The overhead light cast harsh shadows across the documents as he searched for anything about boundary agreements or HOA jurisdiction. His grandfather's original deed was clear and unambiguous. 400 acres. Precise GPS coordinates. No mention of any homeowners association because none existed when the land was purchased. Silas traced the property lines with his finger, confirming what he already knew. The fence he moved was well within his legal boundaries. The HOA had no more right to his land than they had to claim the moon, yet the orange stakes remained. And worse, when he had driven past them an hour before sunset, he saw fresh tire tracks from heavy machinery. Someone had been surveying his land with professional equipment. The violation was escalating into something bigger. His phone rang. The caller ID showed a local number he didn't recognize. Mr. Crawford? This is Elena Vasquez from Vasquez Legal Services. I heard through the grapevine that you might need representation. Silas had heard of Elena, young attorney who had moved to town 2 years ago, known for taking on cases against powerful interests. Her office was small, but her reputation was growing. News travels fast in a small town, Silas said. Faster when it involves the HOA. Mr. Crawford, I've been watching Miranda Kellerman's activities for months. She's been targeting rural properties systematically. 3 ranchers in the past year have lost land through similar tactics. I think you're next on her list, and moving your fence gave her the opening she needed. Elena's words hit him like cold water. This wasn't about 2 feet of fence line. This was a pattern. A strategy. What kind of tactics? Silas asked. Legal loopholes. Bureaucratic pressure. She finds tiny violations and leverages them into major land claims. The county commissioners seem very cooperative when she presents her cases. Unusually cooperative. Silas felt his jaw tighten. You think someone's been paid off? I think Miranda Kellerman has connections that extend beyond what's visible on the surface. But proving that is another matter entirely. The good news is that your case might be different. You have clear ownership going back decades. The challenge is understanding how she plans to circumvent that. Through his kitchen window, Silas could see lights moving across his property, vehicle headlights sweeping back and forth among the orange stakes. Someone was working after dark, and they weren't being subtle about it. Elena, I need to call you back. Someone's on my land right now. He grabbed his truck keys and headed for the door. As he reached for the handle, his phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Stop digging into this, Crawford. You have no idea how deep this goes. Some fights aren't worth winning. Silas stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. But as he stepped outside, he could hear machinery running in the distance. Heavy machinery, the kind used for breaking ground. Silas drove his pickup truck across the rough terrain toward the lights, his headlights cutting through the desert darkness. The sound of heavy machinery grew louder as he approached the eastern boundary of his property. What he found there made his blood run cold. 2 bulldozers and an excavator sat idle near the fence line, their yellow paint gleaming under portable floodlights. Fresh earth had been torn up in long rectangular patterns. Foundation trenches. Someone had already begun preparing the ground for construction. On his land, without his permission, without any legal right. A white pickup truck was parked near the equipment, its engine running. As Silas approached, the driver's door opened and a man in a hard hat stepped out. He was tall, wearing expensive boots and a shirt with a construction company logo. You need to leave this area, the man said without introduction. This is a restricted construction zone. This is my property, Silas replied, keeping his voice steady despite the anger building in his chest. You're trespassing. The man pulled out a folded document from his shirt pocket. I have a work order signed by the proper authorities. Groundbreaking for the Sonora Hills expansion begins tomorrow morning. Silas examined the document under his truck's dome light. The paperwork looked official, complete with county stamps and signatures. The authorization was dated 3 days ago, 2 days before he had even received the HOA notice. Someone had planned this operation before officially notifying him of any problems. Who signed this work order? Silas asked. County Planning Department. Miranda Kellerman submitted the application on behalf of the Homeowners Association. Everything's been approved through proper channels. The man's tone was professional but firm. He was just doing his job, but someone had given him false information about property ownership, and he was about to destroy land that didn't belong to his employer. Silas pulled out his phone and took pictures of the equipment, the torn earth, and the work order. Evidence for Elena. Proof that this scheme was moving forward regardless of legal ownership. I'm calling the sheriff, Silas said. The construction worker shrugged. You're right to do that, but my crew will be back here at 6 in the morning with full legal authorization. If you interfere with permitted construction work, you'll be arrested. As Silas drove back toward his house, his phone rang again. Elena's voice was tense when she answered. Silas, I've been making calls. The county planning office has no record of any application from Miranda Kellerman for construction on your property. None at all. That's impossible. I just saw the work order with county stamps. Then someone forged official documents. This is bigger than property disputes, Silas. Someone's manufacturing government approvals. That's federal crime territory. Silas felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert night air. Forged documents meant this conspiracy reached into government offices. People with access to official stamps and letterhead were involved. Elena, I need you to contact the FBI tonight. Already ahead of you. I have a contact in the Phoenix field office. But Silas, you need to understand what you're up against. If Miranda has people inside county government, she probably knows we're investigating. As if summoned by Elena's words, headlights appeared in Silas's rearview mirror. A black SUV was following him at a distance, maintaining perfect spacing as he turned onto the dirt road leading to his house. Someone was watching him, and they wanted him to know it. The black SUV followed Silas all the way to his driveway before disappearing into the darkness. Inside his house, he double-checked the locks and closed all the curtains. The threatening text message had been just the beginning. Now they were making their presence known in person. Elena arrived 30 minutes later, carrying a briefcase and wearing the determined expression of someone preparing for legal war. She spread fresh documents across Silas's kitchen table alongside his property papers. I contacted my FBI friend. Special Agent Rodriguez is driving up from Phoenix tomorrow morning. But I also did some digging on Miranda Kellerman, and what I found is disturbing. Elena opened a manila folder containing printed internet searches and public records. Miranda's photograph stared up from a real estate website. Even in the professional headshot, her beauty was undeniable. Perfect features, elegant styling, the kind of woman who could walk into any room and command immediate attention. She moved to Arizona 18 months ago from Nevada, Elena said, sliding documents across the table. Look at these property transfers. Silas studied the papers. Nevada, Colorado, Utah, all rural properties, all acquired through legal disputes. Same pattern every time, Elena continued. Target rural properties adjacent to developments, create boundary disputes, force owners into legal battles they can't afford. As Silas examined each case, his phone buzzed. Another vehicle was passing his property. The intimidation was constant now. How is she getting away with this? Silas asked. Money and connections. Look at this. Elena pointed to a corporate filing document. Miranda doesn't just run HOAs. She's part owner of Kellerman Development Corporation, the same company that benefits when these properties get rezoned for residential construction. The pieces were falling into place. Miranda wasn't just settling property disputes. She was creating them, manufacturing conflicts that allowed her development company to acquire valuable land at below-market prices. She targets properties specifically, Elena continued. Rural land adjacent to existing developments. Property that would be perfect for expansion if the current owners could be removed. The HOA gives her legal standing to challenge boundaries, and her development company profits from the results. Silas's phone buzzed with another text message. This time, the sender wasn't hiding behind an unknown number. The message came from Miranda Kellerman herself. Mr. Crawford, I understand you're feeling confused about recent events. Perhaps we should meet in person to discuss a reasonable resolution. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. at the Sonora Hills Community Center. Come alone. Elena read the message over Silas's shoulder. She's getting worried. Good investigators don't usually request face-to-face meetings unless they think they can manipulate the situation, or unless they think they can intimidate me into backing down. Silas, you should know that 3 of the previous property owners who fought Miranda's schemes received offers to sell their land for significantly below market value. When they refused, their property taxes mysteriously increased. Building permits got delayed indefinitely. Code enforcement found violations that had never existed before. The systematic nature of the persecution was becoming clear. Miranda didn't just steal property through legal manipulation. She made life unbearable for anyone who resisted her schemes. What happened to the owners who wouldn't sell? Elena's expression darkened. 2 of them eventually gave up and moved away. The 3rd man fought for 18 months before suffering a heart attack from the stress. His widow sold the property to Miranda's company for 20 cents on the dollar. Silas felt anger rising in his chest like a physical force. This woman had destroyed lives, stolen family properties, and driven people from their homes through calculated harassment. I'm meeting with her tomorrow, he said. That might not be safe. Maybe not. But I want to look her in the eye when I tell her that her scheme ends here. Outside, the sound of vehicles moving past his property continued through the night, a constant reminder that Miranda's operation was proceeding regardless of legal ownership or human decency. The Sonora Hills Community Center sat like a monument to suburban perfection, all glass and steel surrounded by manicured landscaping that required constant irrigation in the desert climate. Silas arrived 10 minutes early and parked his dusty pickup truck between 2 luxury sedans, feeling deliberately out of place in his work clothes and weathered boots. Miranda Kellerman was already waiting in the conference room, and seeing her in person confirmed everything the photographs had suggested. She was breathtaking. Auburn hair pulled back in an elegant chignon, a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than most people earned in a month, and the kind of flawless makeup that suggested professional application. When she smiled, it was like watching a masterclass in controlled beauty. Mr. Crawford, thank you for coming. Please, have a seat. Her voice carried the subtle authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Silas remained standing. "I want those machines off my property, and I want your construction crews to stay away from my land." Miranda's smile never wavered. "I understand your confusion. Property boundaries can be surprisingly complex, especially when they involve historical agreements that predate current ownership." She slid a leather portfolio across the conference table. Inside were copies of documents Silas had never seen before. Legal agreements dating back 40 years. Easements and right-of-way contracts bearing signatures he didn't recognize. "Your grandfather was apparently more cooperative than you're being," Miranda continued. "These agreements granted the development company certain rights that transfer with property ownership. Moving your fence violated the terms of these contracts." Silas examined the documents carefully. They looked authentic, complete with official seals and notarized signatures, but something felt wrong about the paper quality. Too clean for 40-year-old documents. Too pristine. "I've never seen these agreements before. They weren't in any of the property records when my father inherited the ranch. Records get misplaced, files get lost, but legal obligations remain binding regardless of whether current property owners are aware of them." Miranda stood and walked to the conference room windows, gazing out at the perfectly ordered neighborhood beyond. "Mr. Crawford, I'm prepared to offer you a generous settlement, fair market value for the disputed acreage, plus 20% above appraisal. You keep the main portion of your ranch, and we develop the eastern boundary. Everyone wins." The offer was substantial, more money than Silas could earn from cattle ranching in 5 years, but accepting it would mean validating Miranda's fraudulent claims and encouraging her to target other families. "The land isn't for sale." Miranda turned back toward him, and for just an instant, her perfect composure slipped. He saw something cold and calculating flash behind her beautiful eyes. "Mr. Crawford, you should understand that this offer represents the cooperative path forward. There are other paths available, but they tend to be considerably more difficult for property owners who choose to be unreasonable." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm explaining reality. Construction begins tomorrow morning whether you accept my offer or not. The legal documents exist. The permits have been approved. The machinery is already in position. You can either benefit from this development, or you can watch it happen while fighting expensive legal battles you cannot win." Silas placed the forged documents back in their portfolio and pushed it across the table. "Then I guess we'll see you in court." As he reached the door, Miranda's voice followed him like a silk-wrapped blade. "Be very careful, Mr. Crawford. Some fights cost more than money." Special Agent Rodriguez arrived from Phoenix 3 hours after Silas's confrontation with Miranda, driving an unmarked sedan that looked ordinary enough to blend into any neighborhood. She was younger than Silas had expected, probably in her early 30s, with the alert eyes of someone trained to notice details others might miss. Elena had arranged the meeting at her law office, a modest building on Main Street that felt more secure than Silas's exposed ranch house. Rodriguez spread crime scene photographs across Elena's conference table, images from Miranda's previous operations in other states. "We've been tracking Kellerman Development Corporation for 2 years, Rodriguez said. "They operate what we call a property acquisition scam. Target rural landowners, create artificial legal disputes, then acquire valuable property through settlements or forced sales." The photographs showed ranches, farms, and rural properties across multiple states. All had eventually become residential developments. All had been owned by families who lost their land through legal manipulation. "How many families have they targeted?" Silas asked. "At least 30 that we can document. Probably more. The problem is that most victims settle out of court rather than fight. They take whatever money Miranda offers and walk away. That makes building a federal case extremely difficult." Rodriguez pulled out her laptop and opened a database file containing financial records. "But your situation is different, Mr. Crawford. By rejecting her settlement offer and forcing her to proceed with forged documents, you've given us the evidence we need for fraud charges." Elena leaned forward. "What kind of fraud charges?" "Interstate conspiracy, falsifying government documents, wire fraud involving the construction permits. If we can prove Miranda's documents are forged, we can shut down her entire operation." The plan Rodriguez outlined was both simple and dangerous. Silas would allow construction to begin on his property, while FBI agents documented the use of fraudulent permits. Meanwhile, federal investigators would examine the supposedly historical agreements Miranda had presented, looking for evidence of document forgery. "The risk," Rodriguez explained, "is that once construction starts, it becomes much harder to stop. If something goes wrong with our investigation, you could lose your land permanently. Silas's phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize, but when he answered, the voice was familiar. Miranda, but her elegant composure had been replaced by barely controlled anger. "You made a serious mistake today, Mr. Crawford. Walking away from my offer was foolish, but involving federal agents was absolutely reckless." "How did you know about the FBI?" Silas asked. "I know everything that happens in my community, including who drives unmarked federal vehicles to meetings with my business associates." Rodriguez motioned for Silas to keep Miranda talking while she set up recording equipment. "Your business associates?" Silas said. "People who understand the importance of cooperation. People who recognize that development brings prosperity to everyone, unlike stubborn ranchers who cling to outdated ways of life. And if stubborn ranchers refuse to cooperate?" Miranda's laugh was like ice cracking. "Then they discover that accidents happen to people who interfere with progress. Equipment failures, construction mishaps. Sometimes these rural properties become dangerous places for their owners." Rodriguez nodded grimly. They had recorded a direct threat. "Mr. Crawford," Miranda continued, "you have until sunrise tomorrow to reconsider your position. After that, I cannot guarantee your safety or the safety of anyone helping you." The line went dead. Rodriguez immediately began making phone calls to coordinate additional federal agents. The investigation had just become a protection operation, but as they prepared for the next phase of their plan, Silas realized that Miranda's threat meant she was desperate enough to abandon subtlety, and desperate people made unpredictable choices. Dawn brought the sound Silas had been dreading, heavy machinery roaring to life on his property. Bulldozers, excavators, and dump trucks moving into position along the eastern boundary. From his kitchen window, he watched crews begin marking foundation sites with spray paint, preparing to break ground on 40 homes that would destroy everything his family had built over 3 generations. Rodriguez and 2 other federal agents had positioned themselves in an unmarked surveillance van at the edge of the property, documenting every aspect of the illegal construction operation. Elena sat with Silas at his kitchen table, both of them watching their carefully planned trap unfold in real time. "They're using the forged permits," Rodriguez's voice crackled through the radio. "Multiple crews, multiple supervisors, all operating under fraudulent government authorization. We're getting everything on video." The construction foreman was the same man Silas had confronted 2 nights earlier. He moved between work crews with confident authority, checking paperwork and directing equipment placement. He had no idea he was participating in a federal crime. Elena's laptop displayed a live feed from the FBI's document analysis lab in Phoenix. Federal experts were examining the 40-year-old agreements Miranda had presented, using advanced techniques to detect forgeries. The results were devastating to Miranda's case. "Paper composition is wrong for the claimed date," the lab technician reported via video call. "Ink analysis shows modern synthetic compounds. Digital microscopy reveals laser printer artifacts inconsistent with 1980s technology. These documents were created within the last 6 months." Silas felt a grim satisfaction watching Miranda's elaborate scheme crumble under federal scrutiny. But the satisfaction turned to concern when he saw a convoy of black SUVs approaching his property from the main road. "Rodriguez, we have company incoming," Silas radioed. "I see them. Stand by for backup." Miranda stepped out of the lead vehicle wearing a hard hat and safety vest. Playing the role of legitimate developer overseeing authorized construction, she was accompanied by 6 men in expensive suits who looked distinctly out of place on a construction site. Private security or corporate lawyers? Probably both. The construction crews responded to Miranda's arrival by working faster, their urgency suggesting they had been instructed to complete as much foundation work as possible before anyone could stop them. Concrete trucks were already positioning themselves near the excavated sites. "Elena, they're trying to establish permanent construction," Silas said. "Once they pour concrete, stopping them becomes much more complicated. The FBI will move soon. They just need enough evidence to ensure conviction." But Miranda seemed to sense the surveillance. She pulled out her phone and made a brief call, then began walking directly toward the tree line where the FBI van was concealed. Her security team spread out in formation, clearly conducting counter-surveillance. "She knows we're here." Rodriguez's voice carried new urgency. "All units, prepare for immediate action." Miranda stopped 50 yards from the hidden van and called out in a voice that carried clearly across the desert air. "Agent Rodriguez, I assume you're recording this conversation. I want you to understand that everything happening here today is completely legal. We have proper permits, valid property rights, and full government approval. If you interfere with lawful construction activities, I will file federal complaints against every agent involved. The boldness of her bluff was breathtaking. Even while committing federal crimes with forged documents, Miranda was attempting to intimidate FBI agents by threatening their careers. Rodriguez's response came through loudspeakers mounted on the surveillance van. Miranda Kellerman, you are under federal investigation for document fraud, conspiracy, and interstate racketeering. Cease all construction activities immediately and surrender yourself for questioning. Miranda smiled that perfect cold smile and signaled to her security team. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Agent Rodriguez. This construction project is too important to be delayed by bureaucratic misunderstandings. The standoff lasted exactly 14 minutes. Miranda's security team was well-dressed and professional, but they were private contractors facing federal agents with arrest warrants and overwhelming legal authority. When additional FBI vehicles arrived from 3 directions, surrounding the construction site with armed agents, Miranda's hired muscle quickly decided their paychecks weren't worth federal prison sentences. Hands visible, everyone on the ground, Rodriguez commanded through the loudspeaker. Construction crews, step away from the machinery and identify yourselves to agents. The construction workers complied immediately, many of them clearly relieved to discover they had been unknowingly participating in a fraud scheme. Their foreman produced the work orders and permits he had been given, all bearing Miranda's signature and fraudulent government stamps. Miranda herself remained defiant until Rodriguez approached with handcuffs and a federal arrest warrant. Even then, her composure barely cracked. She was still beautiful, still elegantly dressed, but now she looked like exactly what she was, a criminal who had finally been caught. Miranda Kellerman, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, falsification of government documents, interstate racketeering, and violation of federal property rights statutes. As Rodriguez read Miranda her rights, Elena was already on the phone with county officials, demanding immediate cessation of all construction permits associated with Kellerman Development Corporation. The fraudulent documents would be voided, the property stakes removed, and the construction equipment ordered off Silas's land by court injunction. How long will it take to undo the damage? Silas asked, surveying the torn earth and excavated foundation sites. The land can be restored, Elena assured him. Miranda's company will pay for environmental remediation as part of their civil penalties. But more importantly, her entire operation is finished. The FBI found evidence linking her to property fraud in 7 states. She's looking at 20 years minimum in federal prison. The construction crews were already loading their equipment onto trailers, moving with the urgency of people who wanted to distance themselves from a crime scene as quickly as possible. Within 2 hours, Silas's property was empty, except for the orange stakes that had started the whole nightmare. Rodriguez approached Silas as her team finished processing the scene. Mr. Crawford, your cooperation made this arrest possible. Miranda Kellerman has been operating this scheme for over 5 years, targeting rural families across the western United States. Your willingness to fight back instead of accepting her settlement offer gave us the evidence we needed to shut her down permanently. That evening, Silas stood at his eastern fence line, pulling orange stakes from the ground one by one. Each stake represented a family home that would never be built on stolen land. Each stake removed was a small victory for property rights and honest dealing. Elena had confirmed that all legal challenges to his property ownership were being withdrawn. The county had issued formal apologies for processing fraudulent permits. Miranda's assets were frozen pending civil litigation that would compensate her victims across multiple states. As the sun set over the Crawford Ranch, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson, Silas looked at the fence he had moved 2 feet to repair his tool shed foundation. Such a small action to trigger such enormous consequences. But sometimes small acts of integrity create ripples that expose much larger truths. The land was his. The fight was over. Justice had been served. If you enjoyed this story, click the video on your screen now to watch another unforgettable tale where courage and determination collide in ways you never expected. Don't forget to subscribe and consider a super chat to help us keep bringing you more stories like these. Your support means everything to us.